Hey, what you reading for?
The fragility of the mind, how it can very easily sometimes veer off in the wrong direction and venture into some frightening yet fascinating territory. That is a theme in literature that I love to explore. So I have put together a selection of 10 books that do just that. On this list we have classics, we have contemporary, we have literary and horror, exactly what this channel is about. These books explore the theme of the decay of reason in a variety of different ways, from the intimate and sympathetic to the downright terrifying, and there is even some humor on this list. So please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I will hand things over to the great American composer John Adams for the intro sequence, and I will see you on the other side for 10 books about losing your mind. Kicking off the list is a book that I don't believe I have talked about yet on this channel, which is surprising because for me it was a 5-star read, and that book is Playthings by Alex Feby from 2015. Based on the true story of the 19th century German judge and former patient of Sigmund Freud, Daniel Paul Schreber, Playthings is dark and comical at times, with gorgeous prose examining the tragedy and the humanity of this man's psychosis. I'll share with you my review that I wrote 8 years ago. Excellent, humane yet unapologetic look inside a diseased mind. Strikes a good balance between humorous, creepy, suspenseful, and endearing. Colorful and fluid prose, a sympathetic protagonist, and compelling secondary characters. The reader, along with the protagonist, must try to parse reality from memory and delusion, wanting to, yet at the same time wary or even fearful of what we may find. High recommendation if you want to explore the theme of a diseased mind in a literary historical fiction setting. Up next, Spider by Patrick McGrath from 1990. Now, Spider is the first-person account of a man suffering from schizophrenia. He is released from a hospital for the criminally insane. He goes to a halfway house in the stomping grounds of his old working-class neighborhood in London. He knows that he is losing his mind, and he does not have much time left, and he would like to experience one last moment of clarity, so he makes one last-ditch effort to explore his surroundings and find this clarity so that he can understand his past and what led him to being incarcerated. I had seen the movie adaptation by David Cronenberg starring Ralph Fiennes, and I loved the movie, so I decided to check out the book, and I loved the book even more. Spider gives the reader an intimate examination of a diseased mind. It made my list of most disturbing books I've ever read, so you can check out that video for a deeper dive into this work. Tough read and an impactful one. High recommendation. Up next, another first-person account of someone suffering from schizophrenia, this time a young woman, in The Drowning Girl by Caitlin R. Kiernan. I love the way this book is written. It is presented like a diary. This young woman, she wants to tell us about her encounter with a ghost. And as the book goes along, the writing style changes. It becomes less and less fluid until it gets to a point that it's indecipherable. Inventive, very well done, and a compelling read. If you are worried that Spider might be too intense of an experience, then maybe check out The Drowning Girl, and then you can work your way up to Spider. The Drowning Girl is definitely worth checking out. Next up, I am going to do something that I rarely, if ever, do on this channel, and that is to recommend a work of nonfiction. Now, I have a very strong aversion to reality, so generally I avoid nonfiction of any kind. But years ago, I read this book and I loved it, and that book is The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat by Oliver Sacks. Oliver Sacks was a British neurologist, probably most famous for his book Awakenings, which was made into a hit movie, and also famous for this book, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, which was made into a hit opera featuring the music of Michael Nyman. Here we have a collection of case studies from Oliver Sacks' clinic, case studies of patients suffering from extreme neurological disorders. We have the titular case of a man who is unable to recognize shapes, so he literally mistakes his wife for a literal hat. We have another patient who is not able to form new memories, so he lives continuously in the past, decades in the past. We have another patient who is unable to recognize their limbs. These cases are all extreme. They are fascinating and disturbing. And what is impressive about this work is that Oliver Sacks and his team of professionals, they are not able to offer a cure to these patients, but they do offer humanity, and they do their best to help these patients live the best kind of life they can with their afflictions. And it's touching and impressive. If you are the kind of reader who dabbles every now and then in reality, then I would definitely recommend checking this book out. Next up, Dermaphoria by Craig Clevenger. Now, longtime viewers of this channel know that I am a huge fan of Craig Clevenger. I think he is one of the best writers working today. He is a writer whose work is not often talked about, and I have no idea why. So here on this channel, I am doing my best to try to rectify this injustice. Dermaphoria is Craig Clevenger's second book, and it deals with a diseased mind in a different way, or from different causes. In Dermaphoria, the protagonist is a chemist, and he has invented a new and powerful synthetic drug, which he calls Dermaphoria. And one day, while he is cooking up a batch of this drug, his lab explodes. So the book begins with our protagonist right after the explosion, and he had probably been taking these synthetic drugs prior to the explosion, so already his mind was not completely there, and then the explosion, the blast further rattled his brain, so his mind is a shambles, right? And we follow the protagonist and his paranoia as he tries to wade through this mental fog and piece together what happened. Was the explosion an accident, or was it intentional? And if it was intentional, why? A super interesting page turner. It's subversive and it's dangerous, and like all of Craig Clevenger's work, it also manages to have quite a bit of heart. If you haven't done so already, do yourself a favor and check out Craig Clevenger's work, and a good place to start it would be Dermaphoria. Next up, a short story, an important short story, The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. After the birth of her child, this young woman is diagnosed by her physician husband as having a temporary nervous depression or slight hysterical tendency. And so she is urged / ordered to rest for the summer in an old colonial home. While I would not consider The Yellow Wallpaper to be a work of horror, it is extremely important in the horror canon. This is a work that has had a major influence on many horror writers and many celebrated works of horror. We can see the influence of The Yellow Wallpaper clearly in Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House, and later in Stephen King's Carrie and The Shining, and even more recently in A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay, and countless others. The Yellow Wallpaper is an examination of how women suffering from depression or other forms of mental illness, how they are treated, often dismissed, neglected. In The Yellow Wallpaper, there is a shocking display of loneliness and disturbing lack of compassion. While there are no ghosts or no spirits, however, The Yellow Wallpaper remains quite a haunting tale and an important one and worth checking out. Up next, a work of historical fiction horror, Raw Blood by Catriona Ward, or also known as The Girl from Raw Blood in its US release. In Raw Blood, we follow several different characters on several different timelines from the mid-19th century up to the mid-20th century, and each character is experiencing their grip on reality slipping away. Now that is really all I can tell you about the plot. Like all of Catriona Ward's novels, part of the fun is in discovering what it is actually about and following the twists and turns up to that final reveal. Now, Raw Blood was her first book, and it was my first experience with her work, and it blew my mind. If for whatever reason you have yet to check out Catriona Ward's work, I would strongly encourage you to do so. Raw Blood is probably her least accessible book because she adjusts the style of writing to fit the timeline that she is writing for. So we have mid-19th century style storytelling and early 20th century style and mid-20th century style, and all from unreliable characters. So it is a challenging or a difficult read actually, but in my opinion, definitely a worthwhile read. I made a video ranking all of her 5 novels. So if you'd like to check out that video, give you a better sense of which Catriona Ward novel you might want to start with, you can check that out. Or if you're up for a fantastic work of historical fiction, psychological horror, then I'm happy to give Raw Blood a very high recommendation. Next up, Enduring Love by Ian McEwan from 1997. Now, Enduring Love, admittedly, is a book that didn't really work on me, but I do think that it is worth talking about anyway. Enduring Love centers around a man who rescues another man in a freak ballooning accident, which incidentally, I can't stress it enough, if that's your thing, please be careful. Freak ballooning can be quite dangerous.
You turned it around! Joke.
In any event, the man he saves becomes obsessed with his savior. Now, Enduring Love deals with a pathology called erotomania, aka Clarenball's syndrome, which is an obsession or a delusional belief that someone, usually of a higher social standing, believing that they are in love with you. For example, if I were convinced that Aubrey Plaza was in love with me, for example, you could say that I suffer from erotomania, or that I'm just highly perceptive. I don't know, I'm not a neurologist. In any event, I was familiar with erotomania. That is why I read this book, and it reads well, but I was disappointed in how unoriginal it is. Enduring Love is essentially the novelization of a famous case study about erotomania, a case study I was already familiar with, so I was expecting something new and inventive, and that's not what this book is. But if you're not familiar with the real-life case that this book is based on, then it might be a compelling read. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Up next, one of my favorite horror books of all time. Admittedly, a bit of a stretch putting it on this list, but technically it fits and I want to talk about it, so it made the cut. And that book is Burnt Offerings by Robert Marasco from 1973. A family, husband, wife, the mother of the wife, and their adolescent son. They want to, they rent out a house in Long Island, New York, to enjoy a summer holiday out of the city. Now, the matriarch of the family, the wife, she decides that she wants to spend her holiday cleaning and restoring this old house and bringing back its former glory that she's convinced it once possessed. Now, I love this book on many levels. Firstly, it is a reaction to the fundamentalist movement in the United States in the 1970s that sought to bring back traditional family values that exalted the subservient stay-at-home wife. This book, like many horror books from the 1970s, it subverts that idea, that movement, and instead it presents the traditional stay-at-home wife, presents that concept as something unnatural and even a source of terror, which is cool. Also, it's a book about obsession that spirals out of control, and I'm obsessed with books about obsession in a healthy way, of course. Also, it's well written, it's well paced, a bloody good time, or a good bloody time. It's one of my favorite horror books of all time. High recommendation. And lastly, we'll end on a lighter, humoristic, satirical note with the classic novella by Brazilian writer Machado de Assis, The Alienist, from 1881, I believe. The Alienist is a tongue-in-cheek send-up of psychiatry, alienist being an old term for psychiatrist. So in this novella, we have this psychiatrist who opens an asylum in a small town in Brazil, and he continuously finds reasons to have people admitted and have people incarcerated until things spiral out of control. A short book, about 100 pages. And if you're okay with 19th century prose, this book is fun, it's funny, it's a classic for a reason. Definitely worth checking out. Speaking of definitely worth checking out, I have a collection of novellas of psychological horror, Delirium's Muse. In this collection, the characters, they have a tough time with reality. So instead, they choose to take refuge in their delusions. Now, while I would call this psychological horror, these people who are suffering from delusions, they are treated more, or I seek to treat them with sympathy and humanity more so than as sources of terror. The terror comes from the realization that we are all very close to the precipice of madness. Also, I've just put out a novel, Edifice Complex. This is not a novel about a character who's losing his mind, but rather a character who probably did not have much of a mind to begin with. In this novel, Edifice Complex, we follow an Algerian immigrant's erotic obsession with a residential building that is under threat of demolition. Pick yourself up a copy. I'll leave links in the description box below. A great way to support the channel. This, not so much a great way to support the channel, but rather to support the publisher who put this out. But they're both good, and I'm happy to recommend them. So there it is, my selection of books about losing your mind. It is admittedly a short list. Why don't we turn it into a much longer list? Stop by the comment section and add your favorite book or books about losing your mind. I always look forward to your reactions and your recommendations. Thank you for watching. I'll see you at the next video.